Hello, folks. So I hope your week is going fantastically well. Mine has been interesting and exhausting, mind-boggling, and everything else. And in the midst of it all, my phone, my smartphone, my iPhone, my life, my everything, not everything, broke down. So I'm using an iPhone, but an ancient one at the same time. Because I just thought, as long as I've got access to a video to be able to record, then let me get my thoughts out on paper as well as on video. Not sure how this is going to look. I've got my head wrap today because we're not going there with the hair. No time, still in lockdown. What else comes to mind? My laptop. Bought a new laptop in the US, and lucky me, the video didn't work and I couldn't get it fixed, and I still haven't been able to get it fixed. Hopefully soon I'll be able to get it fixed as shops are opening up in the UK this coming Monday. And I should be back to be able to record on live, because I prefer to do that, where to just record live on the spot, upload, no editing, and just at one go. The reason why I hopped on here, thanks for connecting. My name is Chiko. I am a Malawian Brit who grew up in the US, and lately I've been focusing on current issues pertaining to the Black Lives Matter movement, as I'm connected to that for different reasons. So I'm also like a blogger, a vlogger, and I've been writing most of my thoughts on paper on a blog site, and I haven't managed for some reason to just press the send button and publish the latest blog that I've written. I find this more conducive, more constructive to be able to communicate via media means rather than battling back and forth when it can become draining and also get nowhere. So the points that I wanted to discuss today are, I've written them down so that I can remain semi on track. The statements that I've heard: white people need to apologize, Black people being grouped together, not fully understanding the context of Black Lives Matter movement. And I've written something down about empathy, about anybody who's going through like a humanity crisis and a challenging, complex issue in life. And then I just recently read an article about statues, that there's no statues that are represented, or they were removed in terms of like the Nazis in Germany. Can't get my words together, but hopefully you understand what I mean. I'll go back to the first one. White people need to apologize. So where I've seen this mostly is on social media posts, and white people, not everybody, some white people feeling as though they're feeling pressure to apologize. I don't troll on social media to look at whether other people, for instance, Black people, people of color, are saying you need to apologize. There may have been things that have been said in the past in the US for certain reasons, where there's been countries like in Africa where there's been, even like in Germany, where there's been a recognition of empathizing and sympathizing, and even in America with the Native Americans acknowledging what they've gone through. So that is part of, it's not necessarily an apology, but it's just a recognition. So the thing for me about white people are apologizing is ridiculous, first of all, because that's my point of view. I can't say that it's ridiculous from another person's point of view. What I believe in, or other people who are in the who support the Black Lives movement or are part of the Black Lives movement, from what I've seen on the website, and it's very helpful to actually go and see what the website talks about. There's nothing about a statement that says white people need to apologize. And why I use the word ridiculous, it's because it is something that is historical, okay? It's historical, but it's never forgotten. There's been pain, there's been trauma, and it's still going on today. And to me, my pain is focused on systematic issues. That's the reason why I don't believe that everybody or white people need to apologize. I believe that the systematic issues need to be rectified. The systematic issues need to be managed by people in leading positions. Okay, so people in leading positions in government, because that's where all the legislative policies are created, all the policies in relation to equality, discrimination, you name it. That's where everything is created, and it can't only be created by one group. It needs to be a diverse group of people. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of actually reviewing that information. My belief is also that it would be nice, it would be ideal for people who haven't been affected, especially especially people who are not black or people who are not people of color, to empathize, to recognize that somebody is in pain, has been in pain, and is still living in pain. But I've got to the stage where I've realized is that not everybody in life is going to embrace your pain, your torture. Not everybody is going to agree with your viewpoint. Not everybody is going to want to come on board. And it is not my duty to force that other person who can see the pain, the blood, or the torture that somebody has gone through. It has to be up to them to want to see it, okay, on some level, possibly feel it because they see it happening on the news, they hear it, okay. So that in itself, I would see it as a humanity act, because I believe that, and I guess it links to the empathy towards others who have been faced by humanity issues, because in any humanity issue that has happened in the past, and I've spoken about in my last video about Berlin, visiting Berlin, and I visited other parts of Germany as well, I empathize because I know what Jewish people went through. Not that I know, but it's based on learning, sitting down in classes, as well as learning about the American history. I understand that people went through the most horrendous experiences. People died, people lost their lives. And I also can see quite clearly on the news that there's certain groups of people who are being profiled and being killed. Okay, so that's where the empathy comes in, the humanistic nature. Then I'll go on to, I'm just, tying things in because based on this similar topic where people go, oh, but white people have been killed more, or white men have been killed more in the US than black men. Another factor we have to consider is that not everybody is going to admit to committing a crime. That's a person in a position of power, and not everybody is going to in a position of authority, and not everybody is going to, a person of color or a black person is going to feel confident enough to report a crime that's been committed against them. So those factors also should be taken into consideration. I don't believe that any human life should be tortured, tormented, hated, or killed. It doesn't matter what color that individual is. I don't believe in that. I have learned about the American history. I've been open-minded to learning about it because my history my history is diverse. Okay, so born in the UK, my dad shared his experiences about the 70s and what he went through his own issues, not his own issues, but how people perceived him due to his skin color. He never talked much about it, but I know what happened in the 70s, even prior to in the UK. Okay, racial discrimination, and there's still profiling, stop and search that occurs here. There are more black people and people of color who are arrested. There's so many other factors that happen that are systematic. So I also grew up in Malawi, so I understand what the dynamics are there. But the only difference is that there's a larger population of black people who are recognized in the legislative requirements, the policies and procedures, and it seems more eco-footing because I didn't experience, as far as I can remember from a young age, the only prejudices and that occurred, and on some level racial, were in relation to your skin complexion. Your skin complexion, there might have been the adults who were also like battling through their own racial discrimination issues, but that is what I can recall is based on the skin tone. And again, that's linked to historical issues around slavery and about the slave owners making more preference towards people with lighter skin complexion, and then creating a division, people with lighter skin complexion becoming people they abused, unfortunately, who lived in the house, and then the others worked out in the fields with darker complexion. So till today, there's still some African countries where there's a battle in between about people who have got nicer hair, lighter complexion, darker complexion. It still happens. None of those issues faced me. In the US, I learned more about what it was to be black. So this is leads on nicely to black people being grouped together. So what I've been seeing on social media is black people being grouped together. Anything that happens around people going about, I'll give you examples, as the statues in the UK being removed, all of a sudden it has to be a Black Lives Matter movement thing. So I've gone to the website, I've read, because I like to look into these things, and seen if there's anything that the Black Lives Movement organization has actually posted on their website to say people must go out there and remove statues. I haven't seen that anywhere. So this is where I get lost when people try and group and say they, and then when I'm talking about I support the Black Lives Movement, somebody's saying to me, you must do this because your group, your people, and everything like that are doing this, are doing that. Let's be very clear about this. There's a diverse group of black people that exist on this planet. They're diverse people, black people who've got different thoughts, different views. They are diverse people who are protesting peacefully and supporting the cause of Black Lives Matter. They're also people within those dynamics who are pained for different reasons, who are encouraged or motivated and feel supported due to the foundations of the Black Lives Matter movement, that some people have taken it to their own initiative to do certain things. Okay, so it's about being clear and not just blurring the lines that are there as well. And I think this is where also the systematic issue comes in, is when people just say them, is the group. So it's like you're black, then you group them together. So on the reverse of that, I never group white people together, because I've lived in Maryland, well, in the US, Maryland, Virginia. I've gone to international schools, public schools, so international schools like private schools, where there's people from diverse backgrounds, and public schools, just to try out the experience of what it was like to, the American experience, basically, of what you see on TV. So I tried that, and I also got to realize that there were different diverse groups of people in just that small community of mine, and kids who came from what they used to call back then the ghettos, and I'll put that in there because it was perceived as the slums, but it was a lack of understanding that people were being oppressed and also systemized, in a sense that they were limited in what they could have in terms of wealth, in terms of access to similar education means. So I had means in terms of resources. So there were some students who came to my school, which was in the suburban areas, They were called troubled students, but without fully understanding the context of what their background was. It was because they were challenged by their circumstances, their environment. So they were sent to schools which were more suburban so that they could have similar opportunities. So I've seen that dynamic as well, and also like empathize from a very young age the reasons why there were some people from like the Black American communities that felt more pained, more angry, more aggrieved because of the circumstances that they were forced to live in, and that's part of like their community. And that doesn't apply to everybody. There are people who have moved on, but then also at the same time, people should be feel entitled, like other communities, to still live within their community and have equal means to be able to access the same resources as they're being given to the next town. Okay, so moving on to this thing about comparisons. So I've known a lot of Black people in different, from different backgrounds and everything like that. Culturally, we're also diverse. It is the same with the white community. So what I was going to say before that, I understand that even from living like within Virginia and Maryland, that there were very lovely white people, and there were people with extremist views, right? And the people with the extremist views did not represent the majority of the white people. And I still believe that. I still believe in goodness. I still believe in kindness. I still believe in humanity. So my challenge then becomes, why is it when there's certain causes related to Black people or people of color, it then goes to them? It's thrown out as a whole picture. It's painted as it's everybody who's undertaking this task, or it's them. They're not speaking out clearly as to what they want, or it's them. They're being destructive. They're rioting. They're destroying things. When people can see clearly, everyone has access to the media. Everyone has access to the TV. I was able to sit back and assess each and every situation and look and see that people keep referring to Antifa only as the people who are being the extremists. Not accurate. You can also see that there's another side to it, okay, where it's like the right wing, whatever you may call it, and then the left extremists, and then there are people in the middle who have been poverty stricken, so they're desperate and they're thinking this is the best means to be able to acquire free materials, free food. This is their moment. This is their opportunity. They've been deprived. Why not grab something while you're at it? And there's some who are just rebels without a cause. But I can clearly see it. That is different, diverse people of groups of people. But then you see people in leading positions making up stuff, making up stuff, saying it's the Black Lives Matter movement, and even thoughtful leaders. It's the Black Lives Movement. It's these people, the Black people grouped together. But I'm like, no. The people who've got empathy, who've got humanity in them, are supporting the Human Lives Matter movement, because everybody, no matter what race or background, believes that people are entitled to human equality issues. So that leads back to white people need to apologize. I see some people taking it personally as though people are, you, not you, but that's the royal you. It's as though you're being asked to apologize. So you're saying, no, I'm not going to apologize. I don't need to do that. I haven't done anything wrong. And then I sit there and I think, but nobody has actually said you need to apologize for anything, because that would be ridiculous. And the reason why it's ridiculous is because I can see clearly that it's a systematic issue. It's a systematic issue that's been embedded in the system, okay, in the system, to the point that it's deprived people of certain liberties. Now, we can't also deny when people say, oh, UK, you've got so much, people have got so much freedom, there's no racism, there's no such thing. I would say that I can speak to you, but you may not want to hear my truth, because I've experienced it as well. although somebody may not have physically, in the same way that people have been tormented and tortured by police, and it's not all police that are terrible. I believe that as well. I believe that there's a lot more police officers that are great at their job. So it doesn't have to be that you're physically something happens to you. It's the way people speak to you. It's the way people speak through their actions, when they ignore you, when they intimidate you, or when they do things in a threatening manner that they wouldn't do that they wouldn't do to a person who's of like a different color, is a whiter skin pigmentation, and you're seeing it with your eyes. They're being nice and cordial to them. They're letting them through. While you're being there, you're being stopped and searched, while all these people who dress like you, who carry the same type of like luggage like you, or whatever it is, you're the only one who's being stopped and searched. And this happens throughout your life. And when you look at the people who are stopped and searched, you start to realize that the category of the people who are stopped and searched more often, it's not one time, is people who are black people and people of color, that this happens to more often. Then somebody said something like, maybe it's how certain black people dress when they go into shops. Excuse me, that shouldn't be like an issue about how somebody dresses. It's about this. What goes on in people's perceived notions of what they see on the TV, what they hear, and also what they've heard historically about how certain people present themselves. Like, I used to get ridiculous questions asked when I was living in Malawi, went to the US, like, do I walk around naked in Africa, based on people seeing what they had seen on the news. And I thought, how ridiculous is that for people to think that? And I was like, how did I get on the plane naked? Come on, that's the most ridiculous thing. But that's like the loss of insight. So regardless of how I dress, and I've always dressed prim and proper, if you must know, but that's my choice, that's my preference. So everybody should be given reasonable doubt, unless if they pick up something and they put it in their bag, and then you have a reason to suspect that person. But just to rashly profile a group of certain people based on what you have heard historically and it's been embedded through your generations, then you begin to believe that it's true. That's an inaccurate picture. So it's also about learning about different cultures, neighborhoods, and everything like that. And that's an experience that I've had myself, that I've gone through in Washington, D.C. through different diverse cultures. And to be quite honest, there were times as a woman where I felt like, oh, I don't know what this group of young men are up to, but that just didn't stop at just black men. It also went to a group of young boys. Obviously, we'll have these preconceived notions or these certain fears, but there's a difference with that. It's your safety, your personal welfare, but not to the point where you then impede on some, you feel like you are superior, where you feel like you can impede on somebody's personal territory, where you feel you can threaten them, you can aggravate an issue, where you feel entitled to be angry, where you feel entitled to deprive them to live in certain areas because you believe that they do not belong there. And the words that used to be used and are still used in some parts of the UK as well is like, are you lost? Or you don't belong here. Those have been used. Those type of things is a superiority to say, I see you for your color. I don't like you. I dislike you just for that. I don't want to get to know you. There's a difference between prejudices. There's always things in our human existence that we're going to question about other people. But there's something about humanity that signifies everything else. It's about, okay, you have a preconceived notion, but you can still educate yourself to move beyond that and overcome it in time. It's not to say at the risk of your own safety, because as a woman, and I'm just saying because I'm a woman, there's still certain measures that I have to consider for myself, for my safety. So intuitively, there's certain things you're going to be wary of, but it's not at the hate of every single person on this planet because of what they represent. So I'll move on to and close off with not understanding the full context of Black Lives Matter. In my previous video, I highlighted this thing about oh yes. So not understanding the full context of Black Lives Matter, it's the throwing of words and not thinking deeply. And I'm seeing this from thoughtful leaders as well. Just the assumptions that some of the things that have been happening, rioting or whatever extreme levels, that it's being led by Black Lives Movement. Okay. When there's white supremacists doing extreme things, they're not being asked, what is the whole point of this? They're not being asked questions like, when will it come to an end? That's another question that I've seen in terms of what acts you're doing. They've been allowed and not everywhere, but in the US, to roam around and be as they wish, and at times to be terrorists and destroy things, threaten people, and still continue about their merry way. So I just think if anybody destroys something, distracts something, obviously we're all going to know that there's a potential that you're going to be arrested because it's considered a criminal act. But does that mean that because of that person doing that, then that means that they represent like the whole group of people? It's like this division between parties, which I also think is another ridiculous thing. When I say parties, it's political parties, because I believe that it's become very extreme nowadays, where people have lost their sense of core values. It never used to be like this in the UK and in the US, and it's not everybody, because I don't bracket everybody like that. But it's this thing about being close-minded to whether you're Democrat, a Republican, a Liberal, or you're affiliated with other parties, okay, conservative, whatever it may be. You close your mind to all other options. You follow somebody, a leader, knowing blatantly that they're going against the core human values of kindness, of including everybody, of having empathy. It is healthy to have debates. It is healthy to disagree. The whole point of it should be working on a united front so that there are better outcomes happening for people equally. Okay, so parties are not always going to agree, but I just think on some levels people have lost their sense of self, the independent thinking that I can support a specific party, but I've still got my own personal, my own personal courage, my own personal belief to go and look beyond what is happening with other parties, to learn and to also know that not everybody in that party represents what they voted for. To also realize that there's other views in this world, and I can go and do some research and understand that maybe my party might not stand for the right things. And I need to do more research before I vote for a specific party next time around, whichever party it might be, because I want a party that represents things which are going to have the care, the kindness, the good values, the humanity, the equal opportunities, that don't discriminate against people for for being different in whatever shape or form. I'm going to do my own personal research, and I'm not going to pinpoint hate people just because they've chosen specific things. I have my own challenges when I see people who represent or have voted for specific individuals who have blatantly come out and said horrific things, and I think, is that what that person believes then, because they voted for that individual? But still, I'm not going to hold that against everybody. I'm not going to be like, because if I haven't heard you say anything specific, that's not going to be something that I might think, oh, because you're standing in a group and you're shouting out these beliefs, you're yelling against somebody else, then I might be like, yeah, maybe then I need to look at it further, that maybe your views might be extreme and you don't have any act of goodness in your intentions. Your act are to stamp on, to hate other people for their views, or to hate them because of their race and their color. I'll end off with when Black Lives Matter movement was created, they created the wording Black Lives Matter. I think it's almost like people want to say all lives matter too, and I'll keep coming back to that over and over. People are entitled, whether we agree or not, to create something they feel aggrieved by, and it's not new, it's historical, it's ancient, it's over and done with. It's tiresome, it's exhausting. So when somebody creates something, it's not like one day they woke up and decided, oh my goodness, today I'm just gonna throw out something randomly in the air. Then all of a sudden, it's just to make myself feel good and exclude other people because I dislike them. That's not what it ever stood for. It stands for we, the movement, the cause, the people, us who support it, want to feel included. Okay, I want to feel included in part of the system. I don't want to be looked at, because that's not what I was born to do, is to live my life through my color, because certain people just refuse to see me as their equal, and certain people decide to make life much more difficult, but then you still fight through it, you overcome it, but they have determined through systematic issues that they feel more entitled. So when I say I support the cause, I believe it's a cause for good, and it's an improvement for everybody. There's almost fear. I think somebody said something like about comparing it to South Africa, right? And what's happening in South Africa, completely different narratives, but still very similar. Okay, very similar in a sense that we're all fighting for the same thing as the end result. The same thing is wanting to feel included, and also looking at reviewing the equality policies, so that when I apply for a job, you're not just looking at my name and then throwing away my application because you have seen that my name does not represent the people who live in the UK or who live in the US or wherever else, or because Europeans might feel more entitled to belong to Europe when the other people of color who've lived here for a very, very long time, you know, through their like ancestors, but they're still not their full satisfaction that they can be somebody who's a person of color, who can be black and be European and be proud to be European. That's another debate for another day. But it's very, very simple. And I just think, what if the tables were reversed? What if the tables were reversed? Because nobody is saying, I want you to pay me. I want you to give you money for all the wrongs you have done. I want you to kneel down. I want you to pay me. So what if life was the way around? And I'll leave you with that thought. This is like the third or fourth thought. What if it was flipped the other way around, and you had to experience what most of us have had to go through, whether it's explicit or implicit racial discrimination throughout your life? How would you then feel? Would you be okay with the things that you have heard so far, the injustices that have happened, the injustices that you have seen in the way people are killed, okay? In the way people are excluded, black people, people of color, thrown off their lands, and so many other things that I don't think I even need to name all of them. It's about walking in another person's shoes. Like for me, I have fibromyalgia. Nobody can ever get close to understanding that I have fibromyalgia because it's invisible. The people who relate to it are the people who have got fibromyalgia or have got something that's close to what I experience. They'll empathize. There are people that I will explain as much as possible. They'll understand, they'll hear me. But then there's another group of people that will just be like, no, you're making it up. No, it's an excuse. So this is exactly the same comparison of what's going on now. It's a disregard that if somebody says they're in pain, no, I don't hear you, it doesn't exist. Bye for me for now. I would like to hear your views too.